I felt myself being nudged awake. "Mum, I can't get to sleep." My daughter stood at the end of my bed. I rubbed my eyes and peered at her through the darkness. Her body was shuddering and she was clutching her teddy bear. "Why not, honey?" I asked, holding my hand out towards her. She shuffled over to approach me and took my hand in hers. She was shaking so much that my arm began to tremble. There was something in my room. What was it? I don't know. I woke up and it was standing near my door. I turned my nightlight on, but it ran away before I could see it. She spoke so quietly that I had to strain to be able to hear her. I looked up at her face and saw her eyes, wide open and full of terror. My heart skipped a beat. "There's no one here except me, Amelia. It's just your imagination." I gave her hand a squeeze. "Mummy," she hovered a finger over her mouth. "It might hear you." I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had suddenly washed over me. "She's just having nightmares. There's nothing there. Go back to sleep, baby," I whispered. "I don't want it to come and get me." "Come sleep in my bed then," I said. "You'll be safe here. Nothing will come and get you if you're next to me." She climbed into the bed and wedged herself underneath the covers, gazing up at me. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I'm completely sure." I smiled. "Pinky promise? Pinky promise." She closed her eyes and soon I felt her breathing slowly beside me. I tried to fall asleep, but for some odd reason I couldn't. I was exhausted, it had been a long day, and I'd only slept for an hour or two before she'd woken me up, but I only felt myself staring at the wall. I was strangely aware of everything around me, the sound of the fridge buzzing in the kitchen, the walls creaking from the wind, the musty smell of the unchanged sheets, the feel of the fuzzy woolen blanket on my legs. The uneasy feeling still remained, but I knew it wasn't anything to worry about. Children scare their parents with their own imaginations all the time. I stroked her hair softly, hoping that the repetitive motion would lull me to sleep. I finally began to feel drowsy and my eyelids became heavy. It was so peaceful beneath the covers, so warm with body heat and quiet. I drifted further away from consciousness until I heard something. I jolted awake, my eyes open and my ears listening intently. My heart beating fast. The noise had sounded something like footsteps on the kitchen floor. It had only been feigned, but it wasn't something that should be there. I knew it. It was silent for a few more minutes while I lay awake in bed, waiting to see if there was another footstep. Perhaps I was losing my mind, or perhaps it was merely a possum outside. But there it was again. Like the sound of a bare foot on tiles. My heart was now thumping violently. I almost felt as though the thing in the kitchen could hear it. I tried to breathe to calm down, but my throat was closing up. Amelia was still sleeping soundly beside me. I lay completely still in my bed. I dared not move. The footsteps appeared again, but this time it sounded like they were getting further away, like the thing was moving into the living room. When I was sure that it was no longer in the kitchen, I gently shook Amelia awake. "Amelia, I want you to listen to me," I whispered so quietly that I almost couldn't hear myself. "I want you to get out of bed as slowly and as quietly as you can. You can't make a sound. Then, we are going to go downstairs and we will hide in the basement. Okay? What's wrong, Mummy?" she said. "Is it coming to get us?" "Quiet," I said, and listened for a moment. Silence. It hadn't come back yet. Ever so slowly, I removed the blanket and we climbed off the bed. Amelia's foot made a sound as it touched the floor and I winced, but I didn't hear the footsteps again. Clutching Amelia's hot and clammy hand, we tiptoed out of the bedroom and into the hallway, in direct view of the kitchen. There was no one in there. I led Amelia towards the staircase and we slowly went down to the bottom floor. Every other time in my life it had felt like a breeze to walk down those stairs, but this time it felt like an eternity. It felt like a struggle to move down each step. But as soon as we reached the bottom, I heard something coming from upstairs, like a piece of furniture being moved very slightly. I glanced over at the front door and contemplated leaving the house entirely, but I realized I'd left the keys upstairs. There was no hope of being able to get them. Quickly, I whispered, and we continued to the door of the basement. I grabbed the keys from the shelf and fumbled with the lock. Finally it unlocked, and it creaked slightly as I opened the door. I ushered Amelia inside and locked the door behind us. We hurried down the stairs into the darkness. I could hardly see where I was going, but I managed to find the old storage cupboard. Big enough to fit 2 people. We squeezed inside and shut ourselves in. There was a small crack in the wood that allowed me to vaguely see what was outside. I held Amelia's shaking body in my arms and tried to breathe slowly. "What are we hiding from?" she whispered. "I don't want you to worry about anything," I told her. "Just close your eyes. Think about your Teddy." "I left Teddy in your bedroom," she said. "I need to get him." "No, Amelia. You have to stay down here. Teddy will be safe in there. Do you pinky promise?" She held out her pinky finger. I hooked my pinky around hers. "I pinky promise." "Now do you pinky promise that you won't move and that you won't make a sound, honey?" "I pinky promise," she whispered and grabbed my hand tightly. We were silent for a few minutes when I heard the footsteps again, above our heads. The thing was leaving the living room and had gone back to the kitchen. It kept on moving towards the hallway, and I was sure that it was standing at the top of the staircase. It had stopped, as if it were waiting for something. A sound, a movement, a smell. It started to move down the stairs, one at a time. Heavy footsteps. Getting closer and closer and closer to the bottom. I was suddenly aware of how thick the air in the cupboard was. I could hardly breathe through the dust and the staleness, and my lungs were screaming for fresh air. My heart was still beating like a rapid drum. If the thing didn't kill us, then a heart attack would. A thump on wood sounded from upstairs. It had reached the bottom. Moving around the floor above us. Towards the basement door. I heard a shuffle from the top of the stairs. It was outside. It tried to turn the handle and then stopped. I squeezed Amelia a little tighter, but there was nothing. No sound. And then a thump. A hard, solid thump on the basement door. Amelia jumped in fright. I felt a spark of terror shoot through my bloodstream. It thumped again, and again, and again. The thumps grew faster and more violent, and my heart sped up. I was almost certain that it would burst. In fact, I hoped that it would burst so that I wouldn't have to die in whatever horrible way the thing would decide to do to us. Then, a horrible sound. The spine-chilling sound of wood splintering. One last thump and I heard the shards of wood fly down the stairs, rattling as they went. The thing took its first step down the stairs. I peered through the crack in the cupboard door, and even though it was completely dark, my eyes had adjusted, and I could just make out a figure standing at the top of the stairs. Its body was long and looming, and its white limbs grotesquely stretched, non-human. It took another step, moving as though it was gliding. Like a specter. Third step. I quickly moved away from the crack. I couldn't bear to look at it anymore. I looked down at Amelia then and noticed she had gone limp. I realized that her skin no longer felt hot to the touch. She almost felt cold. My breathing became faster, and I pulled her face up to mine and stared into her glassy eyes, and I tried to wake her, but she didn't move. Her chest was still. I held her body close to mine and I wanted to cry out, I wanted to scream for the thing to take my life. It didn't matter anymore. But I couldn't get a sound out, my insides were dry, and my throat had closed up. Instead I buried my face in Amelia's hair and dampened it with my tears. I heard another footstep. Fourth step. Fifth step. Sixth step. I held Amelia's tiny cold hand in mine for the last time. Seventh step. Kissed her forehead. Eighth step. Stroked her cheeks. Ninth step. Put my eye against a crack. Last step. It was only a few meters from the cupboard. I could see its face. No eyes, no mouth, no nose. Just dead, deteriorating skin that seemed to be melting away. Another step closer. And another. It was so close that I could smell it. A putrid, sickening smell like rotten flesh. So close that it felt like it was looking right at me. And it didn't even have eyes. I clutched Amelia tighter in my arms. Another step. The thing was right outside the door. You'll be safe here. Nothing will come and get you if you're next to me. I pinky promise. My own voice echoing eerily in my mind. I waited. The room was completely silent, but I could still sense the thing standing right there. My legs were shaking so vigorously that I felt them slowly collapse, and I fell to the floor. I was crouching, still hugging Amelia. I began to sob quietly, with no idea whether the thing could even hear us. I didn't care. There was no way that we were going to escape. About an hour has passed. The thing has been standing completely still on the other side of the door for the entire time. I don't know what it's waiting for. Amelia's tiny body is beginning to go stiff. If this thing doesn't kill me soon, then maybe I'd have a chance of getting out of here alive after I've gathered the courage. But I'm not so sure there's any point.